Hi, Karen Gray Parker here with your October Quantum Human Design Evolution Report. I'm going to give you a big overview of what you can expect in the celestial weather of this month. So, I want to start first by giving you just a bigger overview of what's actually going on in the celestial weather because we have had kind of a funny, gummy season, if you will, for the last little bit. We are in what's called the quarter of manifestation in quantum human design. The human design year is split into 4 creative quarters. Each quarter has its own theme, its own phase, if you will, that is integral to the creative process that starts the year and ultimately ends the year. Those 4 quarters represent cycles of creativity. We start in the first quarter with kind of going inward and clarifying our dreams and our visions. And then we begin to articulate and act upon those dreams and visions. And we then come to the third quarter, which is where we are, called the quarter of manifestation. It is, to a certain degree, if we think of gardening or farming as a metaphor, it is the cycle of the year where we literally reap the harvest, right? We do the work necessary to begin to take in and harvest the fruits of our dreams, the fruits of our visions, the fruits of our intentions and manifestations. It's an action-based time. But, and there's a but, this year, the quarter of manifestation started off with just a massive retrograde cycle. Pretty much every planet you can think of in the sky was in a retrograde cycle. We still have a couple that are still hanging on in that retrograde position. Now, retrograde cycles don't necessarily mean the planet is going backwards, but it's a time when the planet revisits archetypal themes, and those revisitations of those archetypal themes actually give us the opportunity to do a little bit of a cosmic do-over, if you will. They give us a time to reflect and contemplate and reassess if we're really headed in the direction in which we want to be going. So we've been in this really action-based sort of harvest season with all of this energy that's been sort of feeling like that's shown up in a lot of different ways. I don't know where you all live. I live in Wisconsin, sweather weather. And because, we've had a massive drought this year. And so even though it's been harvest season, we really haven't had the kind of harvest that we normally have. And just when harvest season hit, and where I live, there's lots of really big, heavy tractors, it started to rain, which is the worst time for the rain. We haven't had rain all summer. Now in the harvest, we do have rain, and it's hard to get these big machines out into the field because the soil is all gummy and full of clay. So our harvest has been a little bit sticky and gummy, literally. And certainly for us, metaphorically, we've been in that same place that you may have been feeling a lot in the last month or so. Like you had a lot of intention, a lot of desire to get moving, but maybe it felt like you couldn't quite get it going yet. And some of that's beginning to let up. And so certainly October gives us some interesting opportunities to begin the process of moving forward. But there's a lot going on in this month, and there's always the same theme going on in this month. And it's a month when we really have to get eyeball to eyeball with our fear. Now, it's October, right? We're moving towards Halloween, one of my favorite days in the world, in the year, because it's also my husband's birthday. So we have the month of October, we have Halloween, we have this harvest energy. We also have this month of Friday the 13th. We've got a full hunter's moon, we've got a lunar eclipse, and we've got a solar eclipse. So we have some really intense energy, and the sun and many other planetary aspects are transiting through the gates of the spleen. And so even though we have this impetus for forward movement, we have the potential with the shadow themes of these splenic gates, or the self-actualization center, we call this in quantum human design, the shadow aspects of getting stuck or paralyzed in fear. So it's probably no mistake that we deal with Halloween, a scary holiday, right? We go to fright houses, or we have haunted houses in Halloween. Or as we come sort of to the end of this month, when we're sort of done with our solar journey through all the gates of the spleen. And as I said, this year, just to add a little bit of juice and fun to the whole thing, we have an entire cadre of celestial planets, planetary weather that highlights the theme of fear. And where is fear holding you back? So that's kind of the first big part of the overview. I want to start first by really taking a forward and a retrograde perspective, or a forward and then a reverse perspective on what's come before. You know, we are in the midst of a very big cycle of upheaval. This cycle that we've been in started, I would say, it really started when Uranus moved into Taurus in 2019. And sort of right as Uranus moved into Taurus, this big, huge cycle that is all about disruption. When Uranus moves into Taurus, we're really looking at systems that are outgrown, systems that no longer work. And we're in a disruptive cycle where we're dismantling systems that no longer serve our evolved narrative. So when we look at Uranus in Taurus, the last time Uranus was in Taurus, we had the Great Depression, we had World War II, we had the rise of fascism, we had revisiting major social initiatives here in the United States. It was a time of a lot of disruption and upheaval and then realignment. And we're in that same theme, right? We're really revisiting some of those same themes. Now, as soon as Uranus went into Taurus, we had on its heels the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Now, Ra always taught that pandemics start with the sun in the gate 44. So that would actually put the pandemic officially starting astrologically on early November 2019, a little bit before we went into lockdown. Now, it's interesting to note that pandemics start with the sun highlighting the gate 44, which is a gate. It's a splenic gate. It's a gate that can be potentially a fear gate. And it's a fear that really, a gate that highlights the fear that the patterns of the past are going to repeat themselves again. And in that shadow, we can hold ourselves back. We can hold on to a theme of conservatism, a fear of things going back, or a fear of things going forward because we're afraid the past will repeat itself. And so we've seen in this cycle a lot of hesitancy to evolve, a lot of hesitancy to move forward. And sometimes that fear of moving forward is actually rooted in fears related to the ego or the will center or the resource center, we call this in quantum human design. When we are out of integrity with our own value, when we're not living true to our own value, when we get out of integrity, it's hard for us to want to move forward. We go into a low-grade kind of PTSD if we're disconnected from our right place or our value in the world. And so we feel like we have to fight and scrap and maybe do sort of sketchy things in order to get our fair share, or maybe be ahead of everybody else. It can be an energy that in its shadow can be competitive to a fault, to where if you don't believe you are enough, you're going to be afraid of a future where there isn't enough, and you're going to hoard or steal or take or do immoral things to hold on to those things. Certainly the purpose of a pandemic, if we think of the pandemics, of a design of a pandemic starting with the sun and the gate 44, we think of a pandemic with that gate 44 as being an opportunity to realign what is valuable, or what we consider to be our values, and certainly our own personal value. And I definitely think that COVID is still bringing us a big, deep conversation about what we perceive as valuable, and really invites us to explore, is the narrative we tell about who we are and the values that we hold, is that narrative and are those values actually holding true to who we perceive ourselves to be? And if they're not, if our values have shifted or our internal sense of value has grown, what do we need to do to bring ourselves back into alignment with this new definition of integrity? And how can we then consequently move forward with the confidence that we've broken those old patterns of the past, we've disrupted them, and they're not going to repeat themselves because we've learned what we needed to learn. We've cultivated the wisdom from those past patterns, and now we're moving forward. And so certainly that's been the big lesson, and certainly hand in hand with that, the celestial weather for the last 3 years has really been telling us, look, you've got to be telling yourself and the world a story that matches your true story, the true story of your unique and vital and irreplaceable role in the cosmic plan, the true story of your value. And if your story isn't a good story, if you're telling a story of victimization or limitation, or you're telling a story that you're not worthy, you don't deserve, then that story is going to manifest in your physical world all over the place, because our stories are our point of creation. And so the celestial weather for the last 3 years has really been asking us to look at our story carefully and to consciously and deliberately rewrite that story so that our point of creation shifts, so that we position ourselves in a place where we can pivot, we can be resilient, we can adapt and change and consciously create whatever we're going to create in response to those systems that we're taking down, those systems that are being disrupted courtesy of Uranus and Taurus. That brings us up to this point now. Now, I will tell you, I am working on the 2024 Quantum Human Design Evolution Guide and kind of taking a scan of what's up next year. And I'll tell you, next year, I think it's going to be pretty bumpy. And I don't normally say that. If you hang out with me for a while, you know that I'm always going to look on the bright side. And certainly bumpy weather has huge potential for radical awakening, rebirth, renewal, reinvention. There's a lot of potential that can come from twists and turns in the plot outline that support us in really moving forward and disrupting things that don't work and building new things. But we can't do it if our story sucks. If you're walking into 2024 with a story that is less than, a story that isn't holding true to your value, if you're still living out those patterns of the past, instead of taking back control, taking sovereignty over your narrative and breaking yourself free from those patterns, you're going to put yourself in a position where you're going to be disrupted rather than taking control of the disruption. And it's going to leave you potentially feeling devalued or victimized or frightened and unable to figure out how to pivot and shift and change in response to what's coming down the line. So I certainly would say, it's not a warning, but I certainly would say the weather, the celestial weather really is saying to us right now, hey, you've got this little window of opening between now and the end of the year to get it together, to do your work, to explore what is working. Maybe you don't need to heal. Maybe we don't need to heal anymore. But maybe what we need to do is start looking at, well, what is working? Because innovation, which is actually the theme that is highlighted by Pluto right now, highlighting the gate 60, that innovative energy that is rooted in gratitude. That's the gate 60. The gate 60 is a place where gratitude lives in the chart. We can't make change. We think innovation is radical change and mutation. Innovation is actually looking at what's working and building upon it, finding new ways to amplify what already works. And certainly for us right now, as we finish up this year, we're being invited by the planets to say, okay, what is working in my life? What parts of my story are good? Where am I already creating in alignment with what I want? If you take everything off of your canvas, the painting that is your life, and you take everything off that canvas and you start over with a new canvas, what are you going to take? What are you going to put back onto that canvas that's already there in your life right now? And how are you going to grow that? And so certainly the invitation right now is to really look at what is working and how do we expand upon it? And how do we expand upon it? By telling a better story about it. How do we see it, recognize it, honor it, build upon it, grow it, and let it become the essential keystone, if you will, for our new story, that foundational piece that we can build upon as we move into that new year. If you're standing in your value and you're standing in the integrity of who you are, then you're going to be able to pivot no matter what comes down the chute, because you'll have that core value piece in place. And that is the pivot point. If you know your value and you're in control of your story and you believe you deserve it and you know your worth and you know your purpose and you know your creative power and you know you are enough and you have the ability to use your imagination and the power of your story to call in, because that's really what you're doing. You're calling in things that match the quality of the story you're telling. You're going to be fine. You'll figure it out, or it'll be figured out through you. You'll hold the story, and the next right step and the next right step and the next right step will show up. And even if you're afraid, you'll know how to move through that fear by holding on to a bigger vision of what else is possible. That's our job right now. And certainly, this month gives us some challenges. So let's start first by looking at the nodes. I always like to start with the nodes because to me, the nodes are kind of the plot outline of the current story trend. And our nodes right now are highlighting the gate 42, the gate of conclusion, and the gate 32, the gate of endurance, both in quantum human design language. What that means is that right now, the overarching theme of what we're working on is we're looking at, okay, where do I have things I need to finish up? Where do I have unfinished business? Where are there things that I've put off, difficult conversations, things I need to resolve, financial planning, getting my closets cleaned out, things I need to stop doing, things I need to get out of the way so that I can create room. This 42 energy is an energy that actually can influence time and timing. If we don't take care of our unfinished business, or we have stuff that needs to be moved out of the way and we haven't moved it out of the way, it's hard for us to create something new. It's hard for us to begin to set the foundation for what's next because we're gummed up. We have too much stuff. So think of it this way, metaphorically, you're moving out of your mansion with all that stuff you jammed into the basement and the closets and under the bed into a tiny home. The nodes are saying, hey, I need you to go through a values clarification process. I need you to pick up everything you own and look at it and really ask yourself, do I want to take this with me as I move forward? Is this really going to support me, or do I need to make more room for something new? The more room you have for something new, the less of your energy that's occupied with hanging on to the old stuff, the more you're going to be able to have space to create something better. The 32 says, once you create that space, once you have that room, let's start looking at what parts of the foundation of what's next you need to start laying in place. What actions do you need to take that are going to support you in fulfilling your dream? What actions do you need to take that are going to start setting in place those key elements of what's next? So if you were starting a business, or maybe you wanted to do a side hustle of some kind, that gate 32 might be, hey, I should build a website, right? If you're going to write a book, that means maybe you start outlining that book. No matter whatever it is your dream is, these nodes are saying, hey, it's time to really start putting into action all that stuff you've been doing in your mind. Make the room and take that next right first step. And don't let the fear of the past or your fear of failure get in your way. You won't fail if you take the next steps. But oftentimes that fear of failure that we have is so intense, we let it paralyze us into being inactive. So the nodes are really saying, you've got to push through that fear. If that's what's holding you back, you've got to push through that fear. Now, I will tell you that this 32 gate shows up in a couple of places in this particular season, because right now, as I said, many of the planets are going through all the gates of the spleen, highlighting all those different ways that we hold ourselves back when we're afraid. Okay, so those are the nodes. Let's look at the outer planets, because they also give us some cues and clues as to what's going on in the overview of the current celestial weather. And certainly Uranus highlights the gate 23, the gate of insight, giving us flashes of new ideas and new insights, new ways of thinking about things. So we're really still changing our mind and our mindset and shifting the way in which we see things. The Neptune is in retrograde, highlighting the gate 36, which it'll still be highlighting until I think April of 2024. So for some of us, that's been giving us the flavor of having emotional definition when we don't normally. This energy, though, is part of the miracle circuit. It's actually the place where miracles live. And it's a pattern disrupting energy. So Neptune is saying, hey, we're disrupting these patterns. The patterns of the past, we're disrupting them. And for us to disrupt them, we have to be pushing towards a new story. We have to be exploring and experimenting and engaged actively in the question of what's next. And we have to be envisioning with great faith the possibility that we can literally shift these patterns by shifting the story we tell about who we are. And we do that by having new experiences, by having adventures, by experimenting to see, okay, well, what is next? What would it feel like? What would it be like? It's a very curious and joyful energy when we let it be exploratory rather than chaotic. The Pluto, as I said, highlights the gate 60. And of course, we're in this deep cycle of also exploring. Yes, we need new stuff. We need new ways of doing things. We need new systems. We need to break old patterns. But also we need to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to look at, well, what is working, and really explore how we can maximize what is working. How can we focus on it and grow it? That's really the element of strong, innovative growth. We don't want to start over from scratch. We want to look at how do we evolve what we know already works. That saves us a whole lot of time and energy and really supports us in being able to take giant strides forward without having to experiment and explore with something that's completely new. So far so good, hopefully. All right, as I said, during the month of October, the sun transits through a lot of splenic gates, the gate 48, the 57, the 50, the 28, and the 44, again highlighting for us this internal place of exploration of where are you holding yourself back because you're letting fear run the show, and what bold steps, what bold action do you need to take to proclaim to yourself and the universe that it's time, that you're ready to do whatever you need to do to move through that fear so that you can break free from that fear. Remember, fear is not supposed to be a place where we live. Fear is a signal that you need to do something, right? We are afraid when we run from a bear. We're not supposed to be afraid because we're afraid of something that could potentially happen in the future. We are not designed to get stuck in existential fears. It's just the weird thing about being a human. So find those bold action steps you need to take so that you can really clearly take those actions that are necessary to move through that fear. It really is the only place where, when we look at the chart, those splenic fears really are the only place where you need to really feel that fear, have a conversation with yourself, ask yourself, is this really going to kill me? Probably not. Okay, well, I'm terrified, but I need to do it anyway. So really feel that fear and do it anyway, literally here. The new moon, our new moon this month happens. It's the last solar eclipse and the new moon together combo. Our last solar eclipse on the Taurus-Scorpio axis. This new moon highlights also this gate 32, right? A fear of failure in the shadow, but the energy of endurance. It's a mass. Anytime we have an eclipse, it amplifies the moon, right? So we have this massive expansion in the capacity to lay the foundation for something new. So it really is a deep and profound archetypal new beginning. And so certainly make sure you're taking advantage of this new beginning, really looking at where do you need to lay those foundational steps? What's the next first right bold step you need to make towards bringing your dream out of your head and onto the material plane? Our full moon on October the 28th highlights the gate 27, the gate of accountability. This is our last lunar eclipse on the Taurus-Scorpio axis right before Halloween. And this full moon says, okay, where do you need to release guilt, codependency, anything that you think you're responsible for that maybe you're not responsible for? Where do you need to shift and change your relationships so that you are being accountable for what you need to be accountable for, and you're letting go and letting people be responsible for their own stuff, right? It's our place where we are looking at how do we release any place where we've let our obligations to others, maybe our unhealthy obligations to others, where do we need to release those so that we can stand in deeper alignment with our integrity? That brings us sliding right into Halloween. So use your Halloween energy to burn off all of those old connections, all of those old obligations, all those old cords to relationships that maybe have left you feeling drained or overly responsible or have kept you from moving forward and fulfilling your dreams. All right, last thing I want to look at, certainly two things I want to look at. Mercury, Venus, and Mars bopping around all over the spleen. So again, not just the sun. Mercury, Venus, and Mars are also highlighting the gates of the spleen. So those fears are coming up everywhere. Saturn continues its retrograde station all month through the gate 55, inviting us to really explore where's your faith and what do you have faith in, and are you actively cultivating and strengthening your faith so that you have that faith as a source of fuel for creating the dreams that you're beginning to put into place. Jupiter, our planet of reward, where we get our rewards when we do the work of Saturn, also in a retrograde station, starts off the month in the gate 2, highlighting that theme of how much goodness are you willing to allow yourself, and recognizing, helping us learn that the more we value ourselves, the more we stand in that value, the more we understand that we're worthy of receiving everything we need to fulfill our purpose in the world. And so when we have faith and we cultivate a deep sense of personal value, then we position ourselves to be receptive to all the goodness that we deserve. And certainly because it's in a retrogradation, a good place to explore, are you letting your sense of value block you from receiving all the support that you need? Jupiter shifts on the 13th, Friday the 13th, shifts to the gate 24, also in a retrograde station, inviting us to explore where are we settling for less than what we want? And where do we need to shift that story so that we see that anything in the past that hasn't worked has been there as part of our soul curriculum, has been teaching us to find the blessings and reminding us that we can't get stuck in stories of victimization. Don't get stuck in the question, why is this happening to me? Or why did this happen to me? And explore what were the blessings and the lessons that I got from this experience. Why did it happen for me? Or how can I take back control of the story so that I can find in that story what happened for me in that story, so that I can shift my point of creation and I can stop settling and rationalizing, accepting less than what I deserve, and really let myself position myself to be fully receptive to all the good that I need, all the resources, all the support that I need to fulfill the full expression, the full potential of the story I am. So that's our month for October. There's a lot going on there. I want to remind you, if you enjoyed this monthly overview, that if you join our Understanding Human Design membership community, it's $35 a month. Not only do you get access to massive amounts of quantum human design curriculum designed to support you in learning about how to activate your high quality relationships, how to understand the transits, how to manifest, how to create a good, healthy story, how to, we talk about all kinds of cool things in our Understanding Human Design membership. In that membership, you also get access to weekly evolution reports that support you in learning how to use the celestial weather to support you in creating what you really want in your life, how to navigate that weather so that you have great weeks and you get to use the benefits of that knowledge of what's going on in the celestial weather to support you in your own evolution and growth. I'll see you in the Understanding Human Design membership, and I'll see you next month. November is going to be also exciting.